Good? Alright. About a year ago, a minor league hockey player got in a fight, and during the fight he fell and then hit his head on the ice. When he hit his head on the ice, he lost consciousness, so he went to the hospital and then fell into a coma and died 20 days later. But in a hockey fight, just because you lose your helmet doesn't mean you're gonna die. The players fighting, there's a courtesy factor like in any other sport, where if it gets too risky, they'll stop because their number one concern is safety. And so, since this rare and very tragic accident, hockey leagues and specifically the NHL have been debating whether they should take out fighting, and so I believe they should not, because it would change the game too drastically. For one reason, fighting in the hockey game can change the momentum for a losing team. It actually protects more players than it injures, and the fans like it. So, for my first point, how fighting can change the momentum is teams not doing so good and some players get really frustrated, and then one of the frustrated players gets in a fight, and then after the fight the whole team's excited and riled up, and then that changes the momentum and the team starts doing good and they're no longer in a slump, and it can actually change the result of the game, because without the momentum teams would just be bad the whole game. And for my next fight, how it protects players, hockey teams actually have players that are called the enforcer, and the enforcer has a specific role to protect his players. He's usually a big guy on the team, doesn't have to always be real good at the game, but he'll beat someone up if he has to. So if the one way the enforcer protects his teammates is simply just being on the ice, because the other team will try and avoid any collisions or altercations with their star players because they don't want to mess with the enforcer because he'll beat them up. And then from Sweet101.com, there's an article where Brian Burke, a NHL general manager, and Don Cherry, an ex-NHL player and an ex-coach, and now he does a TV show for Hockey Night in Canada called Coach's Corner. They both say without fighting, more players will leave the ice on stretchers, and this is because without fighting there would be no enforcers to protect those players, so more players would get hurt because everyone would be taking runs at each other, and there'd be a whole lot of cheap shots, and there'd be no one there to enforce any rules besides the referees. But the referees can't do everything, so more people will be getting hurt. And so for my third point, I'm sure some of you guys know who George Peros is on the Ducks, and if you don't, you should look him up, because he is the enforcer on the Ducks, and he's probably the worst player on the Ducks, but there's a whole bunch of people that like him. And I think they like him because he looks like an 80s porn star. He's got long hair and a gnarly mustache, but everyone likes him because he's the enforcer and he gets in fights. Everyone likes to watch fighting, and everyone likes George Peros. And I also have the personal experience of finding out that people like fighting. One is because people stand up for about 3 things in a hockey game. 1 is the national anthem, 2 is when they score goals, and 3 is for when people get in fights. But I also know when I did the foreign exchange student thing, my German friend Andre, I took him to a Ducks game, and then later when I went to Germany, I met one of his friends that really, really liked hockey. And when he found out that my friend Andre, I took him to the Ducks game, he was insanely jealous that Andre got to go to the game because, and I quote, "There's fighting in American hockey." Because Europeans don't fight in hockey. They're more of the skilled people and just hang around everyone. And there's not that much hitting in hockey. It's pretty low-key. And so in conclusion, I'd have to say fighting in hockey should definitely stay in the game because it's been there forever. It's not just two guys trying to see who's more badass. It actually helps teams when they're losing by changing the momentum, and it protects players, and fans still like it.
So Julio, what did you think?
Well, I thought the speech itself was rather entertaining. He always does a pretty good job at delivering the speech. The only thing, and he signposted everything, and there should have been a little more citation, citing sources, because I think I only heard like about 2 of them. And I think the only other thing I would have probably suggested is if he actually moved around so as to like have a transitionary for like when he was talking about the next topic he was going into. But other than that, the speech is pretty good.
All right, I agree with a lot of the things that you talked about. The structure's easy to follow. I kind of like the attention device and introduction. There's a good summary at the end, and you do an okay job finishing off. And I also kind of agree that the substance of the speech needs to be developed more. You've got good descriptions of what's going on. I need a little bit more background about the role of fighting in the game, how the rules work, that kind of stuff, because let's face it, I'm not a hockey fan by any stretch of the imagination. I saw a hockey game once, but that's when my TV was broken, and that's the only station it was on. So you might want to give a little bit more background for your audience about how all that works. But your explanations were okay. The problem is, I think you need something more than just your opinions. You've got, the one quote on the thing about preventing other injuries. I thought that was pretty good. You need some more examples and explanation of that material because it does seem a little conclusionary. That was the one place, though, where you had citation. Every place else is mostly your own description and personal experience on those things. And they were good experiences. I thought they were pretty convincing, but I think that you need to be able to generalize it a little bit more. Presentation is pretty solid. You stand confidently, but I do think you could be a little bit more engaged when you're speaking to us. All right, thank you.